advisor has to quarantine and can't work, this person will take over. So I'm assuming that has been at least discussed by the faculty and by the chairs of the various departments. The classes are going to keep going. I mean, ultimately, if we have to go back fully online, just like we did after spring break in the the spring, we'll do that. We have to keep the classes going.
And your question was maybe from a student's perspective, how much leniency can they expect? Well, we've been sort of given marching orders. I think that we are supposed to, let's say a student is quarantined, for example, we're supposed to work out arrangements with them so that
Right.
they can do an equivalent amount of work relative to what they'd be doing if they were face-to-face.
Right.
So, I mean, so it's not going to be that you're going to miss 2 weeks worth of content. We'll make sure that that's all taken care of. At least that's what we've been instructed to do. And we'll work with the Dean of Students, the
Right.
Student Division of Arts and Sciences to make sure.
That was the point that I was going to bring up. Just make sure that if that happens, that the student reaches out to the Dean of Students. There's a lady there by the name of Denise Tijerina who is absolutely wonderful, and she handles a lot of this. And you have to present her with supporting documentation that you have to quarantine, that you're ill, so on and so forth, and then that will be passed along to the individual associate deans and eventually along to the individual to the individual instructor. So we will be lenient. We will be lenient as long as there's proof, because I know, and of course I know that since this is a Catholic group of students, that no one here would ever want to pull anything like this. But I have been dealing over the summer with students who have, amazingly enough, tried to utilize COVID as a reason to get away with X, Y, or Z. That has been part of my daily routine over the last few months over the summer.
I'll maybe just throw in a personal experience comment here, because I taught 4 different distance courses through the summer. And these were born distance courses as opposed to sort of converted rescue distance courses that we saw a lot of in the spring. So I was not completely immune, but maybe a little inoculated from some of the COVID considerations, since the course was designed completely and understood by everyone to be a distance course from the very beginning. But that was a little naive. And I'll give you 2 examples of circumstances that arose that I did not anticipate. You might call them COVID bank shot problems. Problem number 1 was not the student themselves, but their immediate family, parents and whatnot, either becoming ill or were very seriously worried about being ill, and significant disruptions that did to their lives and their psyche, and how that took them sort of out of their academic rhythm for a period of time. So those were sort of accommodations that really would not be related to other kinds of illnesses per se. I mean, well, you get those things, parents gravely ill, heart attack, this kind of stuff, but it was magnified, right? Because there was so much more of it around. The second bank shot was related to quarantine, which you would have said, what? It's a discourse, right? But I had students reporting back that they were quarantined at places where they had little to no quality internet connections. And that took some maneuvering. When it happened early enough in the term, there was some flexibility with extensions and so on. I had a student happen in the last week of classes, and had to submit an incomplete request because there was just no way to, I can't finish up the course. So I did not anticipate quarantining with no internet connections. Where there were people who were going to other locations, their own house did not have an internet Wi-Fi arrangement, this kind of thing. So I guess the bottom line is, I think can't write a policy because a lot of this stuff is case by case. In some ways, it's not unlike having a major medical situation first that might put in the hospital for a week pre-COVID, and then you see what makes sense. It's just that there's more people that might be saying, I'm part of this group now. So there's a lot more fussing and keeping track and doing things with students. So for large classes, there is a management issue to it all and how to do it. But if you want to give your students some best advice, is say something straight away. It's frustrating to see, I haven't done any work for 2 weeks, and then get this note, oh, by the way, you know, I've had this whole COVID thing going on. And then you go like, oh, I mean, we got to fix the past, we got to fix the future. And then you start to, as Dr. Iber mentioned, when you put your on it, you start to say, okay, is it really all true?
Yeah.
Because when you're not straight away, bang, I can't do any work for the next 2 weeks because of X, that makes you, put you much more in a, so tell all your members to bring up the issue as soon as they know it's important for them.
You know, and let me just follow up on that and give you an example of one of the, and you know, part of the fun of my job is I get lied to a lot, and that's just par for the course. I had a student who sent me an email asking to be backdated out of a summer class, and the student said, I have COVID. That's exactly how he phrased it. And I said, well, you're going to have to reach out to Denise Tijerina, the Dean of Students. You're going to have to provide documentation. And I said, if you have COVID, or if someone in your family has COVID and you're susceptible, or you have all these other issues, we need documentation. And then the student came back and said, well, no, there's no one, I'm not sick, no one in my family's sick, but my mom lost her job, it was laid off when the economy was shut down, and I had to go home and help. And I want my money back. And I said, you know, that's not the same situation. And, you know, it would just be a very good idea to follow up on what Dr. Galina is saying. Speak up in a timely fashion, but also be as direct and as truthful as you can possibly be. That's always the best policy.
So Emma, I see you joined. Do you want to tell everybody who you are?
Hi, Casadante. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Johnson, and I am one of the freshman ambassadors in the Catholic Student Association. Very excited to be here.
Welcome, Emma.
Welcome.
I guess we never actually introduced the faculty and staff, did we?
We can do that right now. I started recording all of this because Blake suggested it. It's a really good idea to we can post it and send it to all the people that weren't able to be here, and they can watch it on their own time. So it's actually perfect because I recorded while we were in the middle of the question. So we can do that now if you would like.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I'm Dominic Casadante in Chemistry and Biochemistry Department, and I'm the faculty advisor for the Catholic Student Association and Cairo as well. Let's see. Do you want to call out the names, Jose?
How about you go ahead so that I can, if anyone's unmuted, I can unmute them.
Okay, Heidi, do you want to go next? You're next on my list.
Yeah, I'm Heidi Brady, and I'm a professor in Department of Animal and Food Science, and I teach a lot of the horse classes and run the therapeutic riding program.
Jorge Iber.
Hi, I'm Jorge Iber. I'm a professor in the Department of History, and I'm also an associate dean in the College of Arts and Sciences.
Okay, Greg, you're next on my list.
Professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, and see a lot of incoming students in the general chemistry program. So Jose was both from majors and more general reasons while taking the course.
Cool. Joey?
Hi, my name is Joey Young. I'm soon to be associate professor in the Plant and Soil Science Department, and I focus on turf grass management for golf courses, lawns, and athletic fields.
I gotta talk to you.
Awesome job.
Jorge. We have two Jorges here.
Hi, Jorge Ramirez. I am a professor at the law school, starting my 20th year teaching. Love it here. My major focus is in the area of international trade and public international law. Glad to be here.
Cool. Wendeley.
Hi, Wendeley Flores. I'm the director of my office name has recently changed. It used to be National and International Scholarships and Fellowships. It is now Prestigious External Student Awards. Much easier to say and much clearer on what that is. I help students all around the university apply for prestigious awards like Fulbright, Rhodes, Marshall, things like that. So.
Jerry?
Hello, I'm Jerry Dwyer. I'm a professor in the College of Education, but I mostly teach mathematics to future teachers. And most students may recognize me as the guy who brings the bike to daily mass. Mm-hmm. And I bring the bike into the church since somebody stole the saddle off it outside the church last year. No. There's my Catholic credentials.
And most important, Jerry is my neighbor right down here, one house away. If it hadn't been for COVID, Jerry, I'd be in your house.
Yes, you are not welcome in my house right now. Nothing against you. Nobody is welcome in my house, sorry.
Same here.
But if you have a bicycle, you can park it outside and talk to me.
Okay, did I miss anybody? Okay, and Spencer and Carl and Emma, we've introduced you, and Blake also, and Jose. There's someone else, Joseph Reisinger. Do you want to introduce yourself? Maybe not.
They need to be unmuted, Jose.
They didn't want to, I guess.
Okay.
I have one question for Blake. What's your major, Blake?
I am a secondary math education major.
I believe I will be seeing a lot of you over the next couple of months.
Yes, sir. I think I actually just applied for the Noyce Scholarship.
Yeah, several people here are aware of the Noyce Scholarship, and at this time it's available for secondary mathematics teaching. So, yes.
Yes,
well, we've got about 9 faculty here can write a letter of recommendation for you. So,
It's a good program. Jerry and I had one in chemistry and math years ago. So, I think you'll really enjoy it. All righty, so Jose.
The following question that I had was, what does it mean by the face mask requirement on campus, as in expected in buildings? How about outside, walking from your dorm that's across campus or from an apartment close to campus? What are the, I guess, explanation of that rule?
Like, masks are required in university buildings. I don't know that there are any exceptions to that.
That's true. That's true.
And on the outside?
Yeah, I'm confused, and I don't know, maybe one of my colleagues here might be able to address this, but I'm confused by those signs that say mask required in this area. Well, how large is the area? I park over in the between the math and the chemistry building, and over by the entrance of the math building, you have one of those signs that says masks required in this area. Well, does that mean that I have to put my mask on as I am approaching the math building? What if I'm out in the middle of the parking lot and there's no one within 100 feet from me? Do I need to have my mask on? I don't know. No one has clarified that for me. I don't know if any of you have heard anything specifically about those signs. I'm very confused.
in general, is there not? I mean, I don't know, WHO or whatever organization the US is ignoring, do they not have a general regulation that unless you can practice social distancing, you wear a mask? So basically, then if you can walk across campus and you're 6 feet away from everybody, whereas if you're congregating in a group or in any situation, like, and I don't know, I mean, I think I'm being sensible. When I leave church, I wear it outside. When I'm talking to people, I wear it outside. But when I get up the street and there's nobody within 100 meters of me, I take off the mask.
Absolutely.
So, but again, practicing common sense might not be as easy as putting a regulation with campus police and video camera monitoring.
I think a lot of those, I mean, I've been looking around and just as questioning as you have, Jorge, but I think that they're mostly around doorways and entrances and stuff. So I think what they're basically saying is you have to put on the mask as you're either leaving or exiting, but you're still outside. So because there'll still be a relatively high concentration of people, especially during class change time.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense, but you know, I think that it should be a bit more. They should be a bit more specific and sort of just give you a sense of if you are, you know, as you're entering the building or as you're as you're exiting the building and you're in the middle of a class change, you should have your mask. You should have your mask on.
Well, kind of like the separate signs that say no smoking within 12 feet of the building, for example.
Right.
I guess we can address the last question that I had on my little sticky note, which is very simple, but I guess as a first year student, what to expect on day one going to classes. And the whole syllabus day, but perhaps it's not a thing with what's going on today. It's a little bit different on day one this year, maybe.
We were told to spend a significant amount of time, you know, on the regulations, go over the class. We were told to absolutely, you know, make sure that we cover that and see if there's any questions, and you know, in addition to what we're doing. But that's we were charged with, you know, sharing all that information day one of class.
I'm in the same college, so I mean, it's probably pretty similar coming from our college. But I think in addition to that, I think it's also going to be important for us to make sure the students know what contingency plans are going to be in place in case something were to happen like they did last spring. So, you know, in the event we go to completely online, how do we plan on, as faculty, how do we plan on teaching our class moving forward in that situation? And you know, I mean, everybody's class is going to be different because it depends on how many people in your class as to, you know, when you're going to go to class actually may be a little bit different. I know there's lots of faculty in our department that are splitting up their sections, and a group coming on Monday and a group coming on Wednesday and a group coming on Friday. So that's going to be very different. I don't know if your first day of class, if it may be
necessarily
Friday.
Be the first day of class. Yeah.
So, and we've also been asked to communicate with our students via email early on. So maybe it's a good idea to make sure that other students who are coming in recognize that it's going to be important to, you know, check emails on a more frequent basis, especially before classes start, because you may be getting some information about how the class is going to work beforehand.
Let me ask you a question about that, Jorge. Or actually, Jose, I want to ask you the question. So as a student, I mean, I've been sending out emails for the last 3 weeks to my students every Sunday just to, you know, kind of get them have a sense of what's going on during the semester. But I've noticed I probably had maybe only 6 or 7 people respond. And so I'm wondering, is that the best way to reach students? I mean, we don't have your contact information to do texting or group me or anything like that at this point. So, I mean, and Blake and Emma, and, you know, Spencer, what are your thoughts about the best way to reach students? Because we really do want those lines of communication open as soon as possible.
I guess for myself, it's kind of like an unwritten rule in a way, like how like you're going to Texas Tech and like your main communication is your email up until like you establish a different form of communication with your professor after day one. And it might be different and like not understood as well and made important during orientation or anything, but I'm pretty sure it is made very aware that your email is where you're going to get all your information from. Expect emails, but I don't really know how different students manage their notifications, and that could be probably a different way of, from what I've encountered this summer, emailing people through their Texas Tech email is not the best way for communication because they will more than likely check their personal email that is not connected to the Texas Tech University directory system, whatever it's called. So for second year students and above, I think it's really regular that they check their emails because they've established that importance. But for first years, if you don't check your emails frequently because you don't know that there's anything important, you will rely on your personal email more often than not until school starts. And that's what I've noticed with communication for the organization and trying to find more potential members for our organization this summer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm running a retreat in 2 weeks that's only for freshmen and transfer students. And whenever I get someone new sign up, I get to see like their phone number, their email address, and everything. And it's very rare that someone uses their Texas Tech email whenever they sign up as a first year student. So I feel like a lot of them don't really know, like, that's where all of the information is going to come through because that's the only email address that y'all get. So I think non-first year students all understand that it's important to check the Texas Tech email address because that's where all the communication comes from the professors.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. I mean, it's a real problem for the incoming students, and that's a dominant aspect of the students I deal with. Half a dozen years ago, when I used to be involved in the pre-professional health career advising, right, I had a lot of play with the summer orientations, and I realized with COVID and the virtual and distance orientations, you couldn't do as much. But one of the things they really tried to emphasize with students when they were here through their orientation was to get themselves connected to that TTU email address, either by having it come up on their phone as another email or getting automatic forwarding to the address they're going to look at. And I often was almost be a station, a service, a planned activity to happen during orientation, that you leave your orientation to your TTU email address as the summer progresses. Because as you're exactly right, those first year students are not in tune with it, and they don't think it's a Texas Tech student that's all going to happen, on the first day of classes. And they haven't really crossed that. It's like you're not really waiting to hear from all your high school teachers. You haven't really crossed that bridge and thinking of it as a more process, right? So there's a lot of that. And it's hard to know how to defeat that. Because if you send the emails out of the Blackboard site, that looks like another weird place. So it can also help to get the email ignored. So those are just, it's kind of an issue.
I agree with, I eventually learned to check my Texas Tech email every single day, and downloading the app on my phone, I think, was the most helpful because it would give me a notification. And so I would know immediately, okay, I need to go check this. I also have it hooked up to my computer, but yes, I think just reiterating that either through a Blackboard announcement or like in class, just saying like, hey, that's actually a really important tool that you need to be checking all the time. once people kind of learn that and learn the importance of it, then yeah, I think that's a really great way to get in contact with students.
When you say download the app, what app is that?
The Outlook app,
Outlook.
for the Microsoft emails.
Oh, just add that to your email address. You mean that? Okay.
And I like how Emma said, and I think Dr. Galeno addressed it a little bit, of sending, like, perhaps maybe if you have a first year student, like a Blackboard announcement, because that is a notification that even though they don't really look at their email, they kind of look at the Blackboard website if they've ever taken like any dual credit courses, or they're familiar with that. Some are more than others, or some are just mess around more than their email. And from there, instead of waiting for them to like be surprised with all that information the night before, because I know most first year students don't take in courses that you start lecturing day one with heavy material. I know that as you go on, those syllabus days are very done at home. You read it on your own, and day one you start going and start teaching, because there's a lot of material that has to be covered. But more often than not, the first year classes kind of don't have that happen a whole lot. There's a little bit of being taught day one, but not as heavy as regular upper level courses that I've noticed personally from my experience.
So people who are more Blackboard savvy than I am, so if you send an announcement out, I mean, our classes aren't available until the first day of classes on Blackboard. So if you send an announcement, does it go anywhere?
You can make an option. You can post an announcement, and while posting it, you can also have it echoed as an email, so that it will also go out. Then it will also be deposited in the announcement library, if you will, which is usually something on the left side navigation panel that students can go back and open the announcements and see old announcements if they so choose, right?
But that
alternatively, and I tend to use the grade book as an email out of the grade book. And the reason I do that is because I get I have the thing sent back to me, and then with the blind season. So that way I have a email record that the email was sent to the students. And which is valuable when you come up, I was never told anything type discussions.
But if they don't know about Blackboard, I mean, because they're freshmen, are they going to know to check?
Well, it goes to your email address. It just comes from the Blackboard site.
Oh.
So the Blackboard, the name of the course is added to the title of your subject in addition to whatever you call the subject. So if you call the subject "Read the Syllabus," it'll say like Chem 1307-001, read the syllabus.
So if you do an announcement. Okay.
When you email out if you get an announcement, I don't know what it does for the email, because that doesn't come BCC back to me.
Right.
It does whenever I do it, though.
It looks like you create a subject, but I don't know first, name to it.
Yeah, I get CC'd whenever I use that option on Blackboard, sending announcements. Like basically there's just a checkbox under the announcement that says, send this announcement immediately. And then I always check that. And then a few seconds after I submit the announcement, then I get an email with all the text that was in the announcement.
But doesn't this raise the question? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's real helpful, Joey, because that's what I do too. Because then you get a record in your email and they got it. And like I said, I always check that, send an email immediately. So if they're not on Blackboard, they can at least see that email come.
When we send out information to students through our office, we always just use the tech email. And the way that it's always been explained to me is that if it doesn't bounce back, it got through, and legally, I mean, it got through. And again, as Dr. Galeno and others have mentioned, I've had many excuses over the years. Well, it never got to me. if it went out and it didn't bounce back, you got it, and you're responsible for it. And if it wound up in your junk file, you're the one, the student, are going to have to be responsible to make sure that that you pay attention. That I always, it's just habit. Part of my first day presentation of how the class is going to run. Everything that comes from me is going to go to your E-Rater account. That's the only way that and I mean, legally, if I'm sending out information to a student from the student division, I have to send it to the E-Rater.
Hey, can I just ask one more question? The people who use announcements, which I don't use very often, I use the gradebook emailing. When you ask it to send you the copy back to yourself, do you get the list of all the students that received the email? Yeah, okay. I'm seeing Joey shaking his head no. And that's one of the reasons I like using the gradebook, because when I send it to myself, I get that full distribution list, which is valuable in that as classes open up, because people are registering continuously. And so I have, especially in my distance courses, I have sort of the getting started email going out twice a day, because it's just too tedious in a class of 200, 300, 400 students to go find the 3 people who registered in the last half day, right? So I just say apologies to everyone. Here's the getting started email again, because you have 4 or 5 days of this registration, even while classes are going, right? So that's why I like that list, because it might be that student only got the last 2 of those things, or the last 1, because they're just, in the last day of ad period. And that's that's like in the weeds for people. But I really like the detailed list of what the distribution list was.
Greg, where is that you sent? You said it was.
So if you go to the grade book,
yeah,
you can click the whole class, right? Click the button at the top and then say, what do you want to do with this list? And one of them is email them.
Okay.
And then when you can send a copy to me, but that copy comes to you with the distribution list.
It might do that too if you send an email via Blackboard, because I don't do that a whole lot, but there is an option to like email via Blackboard, and then it would still go to their TTU account. But I don't know if it gets housed in Blackboard or where it gets housed, like for something that students could go back and look and see, in time, which is the benefit to me of using the announcement over an email.
Well, yeah, I use email a lot on Blackboard, and you can just click it's very much a grid. You just click and it says send you a note. It gives you the distribution list so you know who got it. But whether they can check it again or not, that's dependent on them going back to their email. So Jose, were those the 3 questions? So they're all COVID related, I noticed. Yeah.
Yes. I'm assuming people were freaking out.
So no Catholic questions, huh?
I just a comment there, though I suppose it's more for the faculty and others, about I was kind of quite astonished to hear somebody say they check their email maybe once a day. Like, this is the primary means of communication between the university and the students. It is the primary email. I know faculty, including myself, who basically live on the email.
Yep.
I mean, essentially, you're communicating at all times on grants, on reports with the external and internal entities. It is the means of communication. Should there be something about at the orientation to basically tell the students, this is the means of communication? Or if it's not, let's have some, I understand, that students check texts and I don't know what other kind of things, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, all sorts of other places. But if something is Texas Tech's primary means of communication, then there should be some kind of orientation that everybody is expected to look at their email often.
That is mentioned in Red Raider orientation, Jerry.
Huh?
That is mentioned in Red Raider orientation, at least as far as I know. At least when I was doing the presentations for arts and sciences, I would always indicate to students that everything has to go through, all official communication has to go through their E-Rater account.
Right, because I mean, that
Both
is how-
directions, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. I have this little phrase that says that basically says I can't answer your non-ttu.edu
Yep.
email.
I get, you know, a lot of emails, students asking for concurrent enrollment, all sorts of things that my office deals with, and it comes through their Gmail account, and that is exactly what Dr. Galeen just said. I send it back to them, and I say I cannot respond to your request via your Gmail account. You have to resend this to me through your e-rater.
But I would say that Dominic said these are not Catholic questions. Perhaps they are, because they are, in fact, I think, inherently connected with issues of social justice and equity and all sorts of things, and access and ideas that are very inherently, and in some sense, I mean, I'm coming maybe from the European tradition where life and religion are integrated, and that everything we do as Catholic and Christian in some sort of way, and our perspective, our attitude to students, our respect for one another, all the issues, our care for health that's coming up here are actually, in fact, in some ways, this is perhaps more Catholic than talking about, you know, how often should I go to confession?
Well, especially in a pandemic, right? I mean, because it affects the entire world. So
that's right.
No, that's an excellent joke.
how about you students who are on right now? Do you have questions? This is your chance to, you know, ask questions to the faculty and staff who are here.
I have two questions that I'll save. I have one education question and then one Catholic question. So I guess I'll start with the education question, because the Catholic question is a little, I don't know if tongue-in-cheek is the right phrase, but you'll see when I ask it. But I'm currently studying to be a German high school teacher, and I was talking to my dad about it because, you know, I'm going through Tech Teach, and so we're having to, well, for a long time, I was worried that we would have to do Zoom calls in our student observations and then the student teaching. Luckily, that's not the case, and we're going to be able to do it in the classroom and be with the students, which I think is integral in learning how to be a teacher. You know, it's half of it is instruction, but half of it is controlling the classroom and knowing how to do that and everything. So I was wondering if any of you thought that this might be sort of a new mode of teaching or educating, is that we'll start to have teachers, we'll start to see that being online only, or a lot of virtual teachers. Like my dad was studying architecture, and so they had to go from pen and paper, learning how to draw, to all virtual, all over the computer, and that was just the new norm. So I was wondering if you thought maybe this would apply to teaching now.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. I think it's important to not have one size fits all with that question. I think, you know, I know our legislature a bunch of years ago was talking about K through 16 as some kind of what all of it is the same, and it's not. And so I think when people talk about distance education and they wonder what the first and second graders are doing, and then you wonder what college students are doing, those are two very, very different groups of people who need very different things from an educational point of view. And so when you hear about distance learning doesn't work and you're talking about third graders, you need to socialize the aspects of being a 13, 14, 15-year-old, right? And it's very different than being the, you know, well, maybe 18, but even the average, you know, college students from the statistics is well into the early 20s, right? So two very different places. And so, yes, I think that the distance, that this COVID thing may spur a more permanence in distance delivery at the university level, but it is counterproductive to say that this is even close to an equivalent replacement, like at the elementary and even the high school level, where so much more going on than learning how to do your algebra.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
that's the sense of it. And so, and you, I mean, you're kind of heading into the territory where you're leaving the territory where maybe you can do some of your education online, but into the territory where parroting that and teaching online, to my way of thinking, would you'd have to. High school is in that middle ground. For some aspects it might work completely, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
As you know, fully distance graduate degrees have been for quite some time, serving a very different population for a very different purpose. And they work well. I don't think there's people that say my MBA was online, my MBA was in person, and I'm such a better MBA than you because of the way I courses.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for that answer. And then I guess I'll just go ahead, unless anybody has anything to add to that.
I think we're largely quiet because we agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spencer, I have a kind of like a question, because I'm also going into tech teach, and I have not heard anything from the college about, like, because first semester is going to be is supposed to be student teaching and special ed. Mm-hmm. And they have not, I haven't received anything, and I do check my text tech email. So where did you hear like that? Or Dr. Dwyer, if you have anything to add to that too.
Well, you're block 1, is that right, Blake? I mean, so you're an incoming junior.
Yes, sir.
So it would think, so your particular in-school service requirement would be only something like a few hours a week for only part of the semester. So my guess is that there is nothing maybe even decided yet on any of that, because it's not urgent. Whereas, and I don't know, I mean, I'm not involved in that side of the thing, but I do know that I believe those who are in block 3, which would be starting seniors, I think they are already gearing up and in the schools.
Yes.
What are you in, Spencer? Are you?
So I'm about to start block 3, and yeah, for the whole. I'm sorry.
Have you assigned a school already? You are.
Unofficially, when I contacted I think it was the site coordinator, told me that I will be at Lubbock High with the German high school teacher there. All summer they didn't tell us anything, and all this was going on. President Chauvinek was making announcements, and the news was being the news, and we didn't hear anything from the College of Education. But then they finally told us, like within the past couple of weeks, they finally started giving us messages, and then we had orientation, and they said, if your teacher is doing face-to-face, if the teacher that you're paired with is face-to-face, then you're going to be face-to-face. If the teacher you're paired with is Zoom only, distance, high school class, then that's what you're going to do. And for me, as a secondary education minor, I know it's very different, like primary education, that's K through 8. I think they'll start student teaching and observations of block 1. But secondary education, I'm doing observations 1 day a week this semester, and then student teaching in the spring. So Blake, I wouldn't worry about it that much. You're still going to take classes for this first year, your secondary education. You won't be in the classroom until next year, and then who knows what we'll be by then.
If I can say something, my wife's an elementary school teacher in Wichita Falls, and it's up to the school district, not the university, to set up the terms of these observations and all that jazz. So the College of Education may have not said anything because they didn't know, because the school districts didn't know until like 2 weeks ago. And that changed many times. And let's say school cancels in 4 weeks, because I know about 4 superintendents, and the directives are all the exact same. Your first 2 weeks of school, you need to teach them how to use Chromebooks. because we don't expect to be here in 4 weeks. So that's what it is. Get ready for Chromebooks. Try to get them a little used to mask and some civic duty. And so when they do go online, that will happen. And so when I was talking to Rebecca, my wife, so she has student teachers obviously coming into, she has a SPED campus, big elementary SPED campus. They'll be Zooming the entire room. And so you'll probably, I would imagine, you'll probably observe the Zoom, take notes, turn it into your professor. But that's just speculation.
All right, thank you. I guess I'll see what they say on the first day.
Yep.
And you'll still be hireable even though you have less clinical hours, just so you know, okay? Because the teachers are, administrators are starving for teachers. So, you know, volunteer and you'll be hireable.
So Spencer, you had another question that you said was sort of tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mentioned I'm out there a lot, or I guess I was in the past with Ask a Catholic. I plan to be this semester too, as much as I can with social distancing. But out there at Ask a Catholic, I see a lot of, like, that's an opportunity for people to talk about religion. And so I get a lot of Protestants that come up to me and, why do you worship Mary? And why do you bend the knee to the Pope? And you know, all the classics. And then the street preachers too. But that made me think about, as Catholic professors, I don't know how public you guys are with your faith, or maybe if you have just like something that you wear or something on your desk that's like, oh, I'm Catholic. And if you've ever had anybody approach you about that, and whether that was a good experience or a bad experience, that was just I'm just curious about that.
Well, actually, Jose and I talked about this earlier in the summer. We thought it might be, and let me get some of the feedback from faculty. So if we were to present you with either a placard or a pin or something you could put in your office that said you're Catholic, would you do it?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I've already got plenty of that stuff in my offices.
Yeah. And so that's what I said to Jose. I said, you know, the folks that are active Catholics tend to let people know. I mean, I tell people the first day of class so they don't have any issues.
Hey, I'd be happy if you wanted to put an advertisement for the Catholic Student Association, you know, stick it on office doors when the time comes that people see office doors again. That might, I mean, I'd be happy to put, I mean, people advertise all kinds of associations on campus on their faculty doors, right? So I'd be happy to, I can imagine there's Catholic students that might wander around for a bit, not realizing there is a Catholic Student Association. And so I'd be happy to put something like that up on, you know, on my office door.
Like a QR code or something they could scan and it would take them to, you know, the CSA.
Yeah, right.
Most people will know that I am Catholic because, like, at about 12:05 on a Wednesday, I'll say something. Yes, I'm late again for mass. I'm listening. Or at 5:25 on another weekday. But I'll often say things like that, or even, I mean, I'll say I'm having no office hours tomorrow. And if someone asks, then I'd say, well, it's actually a holy day. I'm staying at home. And then people might say, what holy day is it? And then you have to explain the meaning of the difference between the Immaculate Conception and the Assumption.
See, in my case, it's you know, I don't remember if I actually mentioned that early on in the semester, but, you know, like when I'm teaching my second half of U.S. history class and we get to Roe v. Wade, I always say, you know, I'm Catholic, I believe this, and, you know, but let's talk about this particular case and the significance of it and how it plays out. And you know what, over the years, I have had some students who have come up and said, well, what about this particular politician or that particular politician who says they're Catholic, but yet they support abortion? And it gets to be a pretty interesting discussion. So, you know, that's kind of how but I mean, you walk into either one of my offices, I've got a rosary over here. I mean, you can tell that I'm Catholic and you can tell that I'm Cuban. I've got rosaries, I've got cigars, I've got all sorts of good, Our Lady of Charity is, I've got a statue of Our Lady of Charity in my dean's office. So, I mean, I'm out there. I'm out there.
So if we had like a certain sticker that was specific to only the professors, because I know that there's a student organization logo, and we emailed all our students who we have on our email list incoming, and even advertise it, and present students that if you find this logo in your professor's office, they're safe to talk about, not safe, but they are Catholic, and you can talk about those subjects with them as well if you would like to. Just FYI type of thing. Would that be okay? Simple enough.
Sure.
Yeah, I would use it, certainly.
I think as a younger faculty member, like, I think I would have been a little bit more shy about making it so blatantly obvious, just because I don't know, I'm also a very non-confrontational kind of person, so I try to avoid confrontation at all, by all means, and so it might be something that I wouldn't mention for that reason. But I mean, it would be nice to me, just like you're talking about, Jose, to have some kind of signal that students can recognize that we are Catholic. Because I'm sure there's plenty of Catholic people in our department or whatever that I wouldn't know are Catholic, because it's probably about the same for a student perspective. Like, students don't come into the class necessarily telling us like what religion they are and that sort of thing. So maybe if I said something, somebody would be like, hey, I am Catholic too. But other than that, I don't know. But I would not be opposed to letting other people know that I am Catholic in the same sense.
Okay, because I know there's like there's that part in the syllabus that were like the religious and holy days and all that stuff on there for the student side, but not so much for the professor side. To like, hey, we respect your religion and your holy days. Tell me about them if it conflicts with our class. But it's really open for everybody. But like the professor, we don't know the professor. That's what I've seen a lot on the syllabuses.
I think an interesting thing, though, I mean, clearly, as I said, people will obviously figure out quickly I'm a Catholic. But rather than saying I'm a Catholic, I wish I had a sort of a sign which says I'm a Catholic, but I'm not going to dogmatically push my views on you, because unfortunately there's too much of that image as well out there, you know, because people will expect, if you're a Catholic, you're going to be judgmental of the fact that I break rule X or Z or something like that. So I almost wish we had some kind of a sign which says I'm a Catholic, but I'm actually compassionate as well. You know, or
compassionate Catholic. A compassionate Catholic, yeah.
Something like that. I mean, as I said, there's the kind of reputation out there somewhat in society that, you know, there are, shall we say, extremely traditional conservative Catholics who hold very prominent, I mean, basically, I mean, there's political views involved, and, you know, we have to be careful, like, that we close down all dialogue if we are to be seen as, you know, perhaps, because claiming you're a Catholic can sometimes equate to claiming a very extreme right-wing political position, which isn't, of course, true at all. I mean, that's a kind of an American thing where a lot of the church is kind of veered away to the right. And so, whereas many of us here, I mean, are very much more into the social justice, middle of the road level of Catholicism. And I almost wish, like I said, you could demonstrate that I'm a regular Catholic, not one of those extreme Catholics, which I'll convince you by the fact that I do go to Mass every day and say the Rosary and all those kind of things, but I'm not extreme.
So Spencer, so the second part of your question is, do students ever use the notion that we're Catholic? I've had a number of students who've come to my office privately after class or during office hours to ask me where to go to church in town, for example. Or I unfortunately had the opportunity to have some students come to ask me about birth control, to ask me about, you know, I think I might be pregnant. Is Plan B an option? I mean, some very serious, hardcore questions. But they come because they're Catholic and they want to know the church's perspective on these things. So yeah,
Yeah.
I get that probably not a lot, but maybe 2 or 3 times a semester.
Interesting.
I have unless anyone has anything to add. I have a question, mostly, I guess, for the sake of hopefully the first year students that will watch the recording, or I mean, I think all of us students can benefit from its answers too. I grew up in a small town. There were lots of churches. Everyone was a Christian that I knew of. And so when I came to Lubbock and I came to Tech, obviously I was exposed to many different religions, different mindsets, and things like that. And so I've never been put in the situation of being forcefully having to defend my faith and that sort of thing. But I just wanted to ask if y'all had any advice for those who maybe are put in that situation where they're questioned and maybe they don't know the answer to the question, or things like that. What your, I guess, advice is for Catholic students who are nervous to be exposed to all those different kinds of religions and mindsets.
First thing I would do is get a copy of the Catechism, I think.
Yes.
Because that's the doctrine and dogma of the church, and so you're not going to be wrong if you're quoting the Catechism. And the other thing is, don't be afraid. What troubles me with some Catholics is when they're asked a question like that, is that they'll start making stuff up, and it may or may not be true. And so if you don't know the answer, just tell them, hey, look, let me research that and get back to you so I can give you the actual answer. Because it can do more harm than good, to give a wrong answer.
I would also mention there, in terms of anyone who's struggling to answer some of these questions, I mean, many of us are faculty, are available. We've been sort of doing this dialogue for a long time, of sitting on the fence, answering diplomatically, holding to your principles in a compassionate manner, etc. And so we are always available to anybody who wants to have discussions. We did talk a bit last year, but of course the world fell apart last year, about being available at the John Salas Center for an hour each week, but that never kind of transpired, I think. And obviously that kind of thing isn't there now, but at least speaking for myself, I'm happy to be available, on Zoom once a week or something, if Catholics want to drop in and chat about Catholic things or vaguely related to Catholic things, and others may feel the same.
Yeah, we talked about this last year in the sense that there was one empty room in the administrative offices there. And I think Brother Greg ended up taking it over this past year, but the idea was to put a faculty sign-up list, and then faculty could be in there during the day, different faculty, so it's not the same person. And we'd have a sign saying the professor is in, or something like that, so that if students wanted to ask academic questions or ask faith questions from, a non-clergy perspective, there'd be somebody there who could help. So once we get out of COVID, hopefully we'll get back to that, so we can do that. But the other thing is, and I think this is, and Spencer has a lot more experience with this, although I do go to the Ask a Catholic a Question, at least I try to go at least once the time that they're there. And all the rest of you faculty, feel free to wander by. What days are you going to do it this semester,
Oh boy, Ben Craddock is in charge of that.
Okay.
I don't know what he has planned, but last semester and the semester before, we were out there every single day, as often as we could be out there. We ended up having a reputation because of that. We want people to see, because they can go and look up any question they want, but it's more about being the face and actually having a physical presence. So yeah, and it's half evangelization, but half just social. So
yeah. So if you guys want to go, and gals want to go out there and, maybe just stand for 15, 20 minutes,
And we're just waiting for the grounds use approval from Mike for that. I sent it last week. So we're just waiting for that. And I've set it up for where it's I think 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. what they had on the prior grounds use from last year. So I just copied and pasted and changed the dates, and so that's what I'll be requesting. And usually the time that people are active on campus, not later or earlier in the day.
So Emma, I'm curious, have you had people come up to you and ask you questions?
I personally have not, other than Catholic students who knew that I was Catholic and just had some general questions. But as far as people outside of the faith, no one that was non-Christian. I've had some other denominations, Lutheran, Baptist, ask me some questions, but I haven't had the opportunity to discuss my faith with someone that wasn't Christian.
So there are some classic questions like, I think Spencer said one like, why do you pray to Mary? What's the difference between consubstantiation and transubstantiation?
Why does why does my mass not count for you?
Yeah.
Why is my Eucharist different than yours?
How come I can't receive communion in your church?
Why do you have more books in your Bible?
Yeah. Hey, Bridget.
One thing I would say, Emma, I'm from the southeastern part of the United States, and so where I'm from, we might have one Catholic church like per town, and we might have to go to a different town to go to the Catholic church, and it's like a really I mean, other Christian denominations are much more bountiful than Catholics, and so it's different to me to live here where there's like 7 Catholic churches in Lubbock, and you can go to whichever one you want to. But whenever I was there, I mean, didn't necessarily use it a whole lot, but we got these like little simple things that you can keep in your Bible very easily or whatever book. And it's like a little cheat sheet to answer questions, and they're all like biblical based. So it's like, why do you believe in Mary? And then there's 6 or 8 different references to Bible verses about Mary, or Mary's, doesn't have original sin. And then again, there's like 6 different Bible verses that, and if you're talking to somebody who is like Baptist or Christian denomination, then, they're going to tend to be more open to hearing about Bible verse as opposed to hearing about the catechism, because they're probably not going to believe a whole lot about what you're telling them about this book that's Catholic derived, even though it is true that that's the foundation of the faith.
But I think that going back to
Thank you.
what
I will have to look those up, and hopefully that would be a good thing to provide to the freshman and first year students at one of my activities that we have. So thank you.
I may have some of those in my Bible still. I'm not really sure. I'd have to look and see if I still have some of those little things sitting around.
And going back to what Casadante was saying about just the idea of like having a certain faculty available once a week or any like once a month type of situation is very helpful in the way, because I know that I can easily have a conversation with Dr. Casadante, even though I didn't have him as a professor, just because I had like an automatic connection with him. And I'm sure if I knew that with Dr. Galeen, when I did have him as a professor my freshman year, I would have gone to his office hours more than I didn't really need to, but try to form a a connection and like a student faculty professor relationship that it was, if I didn't have a connection from the very beginning, it was very hard to approach the professor. And I know a lot of the faculty that are on here, and then others that were on the email list that Casadante said are very well known on campus, but also a lot of students have them at some point, because I know if you're on the whole arts and sciences side, you might have either Dr. Galeen or Dr. Casadante, because one of them teaches the honor sections and the other one teaches majors and the online chemistry section that most students have to take on that route. So you encounter that professor. So I think that would be a very good idea if it's able to be followed through this year. I know not from the very beginning of the semester, just because there's so many unanswered questions still, but maybe perhaps next semester, or when things actually are a normality of whatever it becomes.
You raise a good point also, Jose, in the sense that what we could do, and Chris, I have to get approval and permission from the faculty and staff, but we could provide a list of Catholic faculty and staff to you to send out, like maybe on the Facebook page or whatever. And that way people, if they're planning for classes, they can look on that list and say, oh yeah, I'm taking history. Well, John Howe teaches a course in medieval Europe. It might be kind of a cool course to take because I know he's Catholic and he's going to talk about things from a Catholic perspective, for example. And maybe a little more, the content's not going to be quite as obvious in science classes and stuff, but at least you'd know that the person maybe has a shared faith perspective. So that might be something to think about too.
Another thing that we could do is at the Ask a Catholic table, have that list as just because they have all sorts of stuff. And I know I'm not at the Ask a Catholic table as much as Spencer, but if I'm not doing anything, then I just swing by. But we actually get a lot of students who are just walking by and say like, oh, like I'm Catholic, like what do y'all like have? And they've never heard of the Catholic Student Association, so we fill them in on what we do. And I don't know, it might be an interesting thing to be able to say like, oh, here's like a list of a bunch of Catholic professors, if you have any like just questions, or if you have these teachers looking for teachers. So
yeah, I'll work on that. So.
And I guess a name is like, that would be easier if it comes to like privacy stuff and like communications, like just the name. They have to work extra hard to find your contact information, your email. I had a professor last semester who his email was actually not his real name. So I might encounter, it might be a bigger problem and easier just to like have a name instead of having name and email, if that was able to happen. You might get random emails from random students spamming.
Yeah, no, names would be the way to go, I think. Hey, Bridget.
Hi.
She's new, but she's not new. Do you want to say hi to the faculty who are still here?
Hi, Bridget.
Hi.
Bridget's actually a physics major still, yeah? So a little unusual in terms of majors. I mean, I've only known one other physics major who's Catholic. Of course, that probably represents a couple of years worth of graduating majors in that department. So
Galileo was Catholic, wasn't he?
some people would say so. Yeah.
But I guess if we don't have any other questions, we can do some closing remarks, and then I can stop the recording and end it there.
Should we not close with a prayer, given that we're all a Catholic group?
Good idea.
I like it.
Maybe that can be after the closing remarks. We can close with a prayer.
Yeah.
Well, I think this was really helpful, actually as even a faculty member, just visiting with other faculty, and we'd love to visit with students more, but I think it'd be great to have it maybe another time throughout the semester, because people right now are pretty harried and they might not think of questions until a little bit later, but I think it'd be great to do this again, or maybe on a semi-regular, somewhat regular basis. I think it would be great.
I have just another question or thought, since education is my major and so it interests me, but y'all had asked us about like the email situation. So is there any other questions that the faculty may have for us students.
How are you guys feeling about the beginning of the semester?
Very worried, as in like if we go online. I know as a science major, like my labs are the main thing that I'm worried about. I'm doing undergraduate research this semester, so one of those worries is that what kind of project do I want to do? What do I want to do? Do I want to do something very fast that can be done in like 2-3 weeks and then like analyze for like a whole 3-4-5 month time period? Or how it will be just because everything might like be done all online. So it's very worrying in my side, and might be the same thing for other students who have not labs, but like for Blake, those tech teach items and just like other interactive forms of learning that are in the class that are like have to be done in person. So like the engineers, architecture people, I would be very worried if I was any of those, that your semester's done online again and you don't get that hands-on experience. And I took a class last semester of ways to enhance your learning experience, and one of the reasons that I'm doing undergraduate research this semester is because I want to enhance my experience at Texas Tech. And if that's not able to happen, then it's very, not boring, but just sad that I only get to learn from a book versus hands-on in other ways.
I don't speak for the university at all, but I'm guessing that if we go back online, it's not going to be like in March where we went back online for the totality of the semester. I think, this is just my guess, that if we go back online, we'll go back online for a couple of weeks and we'll see what happens to the level of COVID. And if it goes down, then we might open back up again. So I think what I'm guessing is it will have sort of an up and down kind of online, not online, online, not online. Yeah, resiliency is going to be the best characteristic to have this semester. But I know in terms of undergraduate research, I've got 7 undergraduates working for me. And we've worked out staggered schedules so that if, for example, somebody does become COVID positive, they're not going to infect the entire lab. And we're required to have a 12-foot distance between us and the students working, say at the next bench or hood. And so even if somebody is ill, we can certainly do contact tracing, but the odds that everybody is going to be, have to leave the lab because of that is, I think, marginally small. So I think you'll still be able to have a reasonable lab experience. You just have to be careful and do all the things that, everybody says in terms of hygiene and stuff.
I think my biggest concern with starting is because when we went online last semester, this was all like new, and everyone was really relaxed, and all the professors were really understanding. So my concern would be that, like, if we do end up going back online, are the professors and the university gonna like still kind of be like, hey, we're all trying to figure this out together, or is it gonna be like you're expected to do the same? Are you expected to? Is it gonna be a lot stricter, I guess, than what it would be last semester? Because I know personally, I have yet to meet any other student who says like, oh yeah, I learned much better online. So it would just worry me that that it would, like, the expectations would be a lot higher, I guess, this semester if we go back online than last semester.
I think that's really going to depend on the professor and the subject. I know that last semester I heard from a number of my engineering students that Online was actually worse for them because the professor felt, oh, you've got all this free time because you're online, so I'll give you more problems to work. So they ended up working harder online than they did face-to-face. And that may be the concern that you're having, but I know most professors don't like to be in the situation of having to shift back and forth between face-to-face and online. And we understand that just like we're not really happy about doing that, you're not going to be happy about it either. And so I think the majority of the professors will cut some slack. Plus, unlike in March, we've been every which way to Sunday on this issue. So, I mean, we've all had to think about the professor who's just planning to go face-to-face and didn't prepare for online this fall is really short-sighted at the very best. So I don't think this should catch any faculty member off guard if we have to go online. So
I know that personally, my schedule, a lot of my classes have changed. I actually only have one in-person class, and everything has been moved, or everything else has been moved to fully online. So thankfully, I have the opportunity to prepare myself at the beginning of the semester because the majority of my courses have been moved to online. And I've had experience with online courses since before COVID. Took dual credit courses, had online courses planned for this summer. So my goal now really is to work on my relationship with my professors through the computer. It takes a lot more effort, I feel like. And so as a student, my goal is really just to try to be as face-to-face with my professor when I have questions as I can, because I feel like not only will that help the professor to know my name and know who I am, and I can better form a relationship with them, but it'll also probably feel a little bit more comfortable for both of us. Talking through a screen isn't the same thing as talking to a person, but at this point, I'm very grateful to have any interaction I can get. So that's kind of my personal take on this upcoming semester.
well, and kind of along those lines, I mean, so one of the things that faculty usually end up doing, especially if a person's going to medical school or graduate school or professional schools afterwards, is that they need recommendation letters, right? And a lot of people go back to their professors and say, hey, you know, I had you in class. I'm like, yeah, but you were one of 300. I don't know, you know, they can say how you did in class, but I don't know you well. But, and this goes back to the point that Blake and Jose made earlier. If you could establish a relationship with a professor, not necessarily a random one, but a professor that you know is Catholic, and that you can, you know, have discussions about things that are not just class related, but you can talk to them about your extracurriculars, you can talk to them about your faith life and stuff. I can tell you, having written thousands of recommendation letters, that in fact, the people who are reading these like to know more than, oh, I got an A in freshman chemistry, right? So they want to know that you're a real human being with three-dimensional qualities. And so being able to write about that in these letters is very important. So that's another added feature that, you know, getting to know some Catholic professors might be helpful. But you're absolutely right, Emma. I think getting to know your professors as much as possible through the Zoom mechanism is a smart move.
I am applying for OT school, occupational therapy school, hopefully this next upcoming summer. So yes, recommendation letters I will definitely need to be working on. So thank you.
But mentioning that again, and you mentioned as well, you know, forming the relationships, forming the group, and you know, everybody, I think, you know, we kind of think, or we pretend, oh, well, everyone has their circle of friends, I keep away or whatever. But I think everybody is a bit more isolated. I'm just thinking, you know, of the thing here now, we're having an interaction, and I suddenly realized one of the things, I mean, one of the important aspects of church is community. And, you know, we go to church, and then we stand outside the door for 20 minutes as like good Catholics gossiping. But then we form relationships, we build community. Now we stand outside the door, we look at each other through a mask for 2 minutes and then we leave. In other words, the opportunity for community is being diminished. And I wonder again here in this sort of thing, whether we could build up a bit more of community, at least through a combination of students and faculty, to make this type of event even that we have, more regular or something, and give a few people. I mean, I love the opportunities to debate and discuss, and in fact, even criticize a lot of Catholic teachings and see where it goes, just for being the devil's advocate on everything, and all that kind of discussion. And it's a way of building community. It's a way of relating, which I think is being denied to a lot of people. And we spend a lot of time on Zoom, but it's bang, 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 more. One Zoom finishes, the next Zoom starts. But there's very little kind of a meaningful discussion. It's going like from one pi square to the next one.
Well, and that was actually in the CSA meeting we had last week. That was Father Carl's charge to the group. I mean, to develop community. It's hard to develop community when you're, half online, half face-to-face, or completely online. So, so Father Carl spent a fair amount of time actually talking about that very issue. So I'm glad to see that we have really good representation here from the CSA, from people from the outside, because, this may be our community for the next year even. So we have to figure out how to manage this and make it as meaningful as if we're able to see everybody face to face.
Back to Blake's original comment, and buckets of anecdotal evidence from general chemistry repeating that they learned the content much better in the distance course than they did in their face-to-face course. So I'm just putting that out there with your open that we're all really glad. Nobody's going to say glad they have a distance course.
If I can add on that.
I don't think that's universally true. I think this could be well, the niche is big, but for technical material, there's some advantages to distance delivery that doesn't play over into a poetry course where there's a much more discussive nature to the content, where you can deliver content in more chunking idea, even chunkettes, and exercise those ideas very amenable to technical STEM type courses. That distance can have a real advantage over an 80-minute lecture.
Not in mathematics, where you have to interact and discuss and develop and work, and there's a level of interaction. In other words, mathematics is not a delivery sport. And so I think in that one we want more and more interaction, and I'm wondering how many breakout rooms I can do to get people because they have to do math, they have to talk math, they have to see me doing math. So delivery mode doesn't work as such. So that's a challenge, I think, there.
As a grad student, I'm worried about I'm appointed to a federal grant in a business college, and I'm scared that, well, we only have 3 years. So, and I also don't think that if any type of human research is going to be very valid right now, because there's going to be this giant third variable. So, I mean, anything that I'm going to read in the next couple of years that's based in this period, I'm going to have huge validity concerns. So, because the population isn't typical right now. And so in my field, I'm just writing a bunch of meta-analysis over and over and over again, because cognitive participant seems pretty worthless right now.
So I would address that in your IRB if you're doing a lot of human subjects work, because they're gonna ask you about it anyway. So you might as well just be upfront about it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, going into this new semester. I'm more, I don't know if I would say nervous. I'm just kind of like blowing along with the wind and seeing what happens and where it takes us. But I like to speculate. And I'm really excited to see what happens because when you think about it, what percentage of Lubbock's population is are tech students? Isn't it like 1/10 or some little less of that? Probably. It's a big size, and you can tell when
It's about 10%. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little more, maybe, yeah.
A little more.
Yeah, 35 out of 220-ish.
Jeez. Okay. Well, in that case, I worry about everybody coming from all around Texas, maybe even out of state. I don't know how many out of state students we have, but people traveling into Lubbock, which is, I guess, going to be the problem with all public universities in a few weeks. And then that coupled with, I'm not in Greek life, but I feel like Greek life is still going to want to do Greek life things. People are going to want to go to bars, to restaurants. They're going to want their recreational activities, recreational sports. And I don't know if that'll create like an outbreak within the tech community. I hope not. But it'll be interesting to see if it does happen, how the school will kind of address that, because I have a feeling that I forgot who said it earlier, but that we won't, like, the likelihood of us going back to online just for the rest of the semester is probably not going to be super likely. I think that's because of football. I think the school wants their football money, and I think that's a big motivator right now for wanting to do things right. But I don't know. I don't feel like I'm personally affected too much by whether or not we go online. At least in terms of student observations, yes. But yeah, it's just sort of a speculation. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, in terms of, I wanted to make a comment on the conversation we were having about community. Yeah, there's a lot of roadblocks to that. There's a lot of things we won't get to do as in the Catholic Student Association that people really love, and that I'm really upset for our first year students that they won't get to experience certain things, or certain things are going to be postponed. But I'm very thankful that we still get to use the Catholic Student Center in general. There have been restrictions placed on it. Like you have to sign in and everybody has to wear a mask and there's no more dinner and rosary. But other than that, we still get to use the center, and I'm thankful for that. So it's bad, and it makes me upset, but there's still something. And yeah, I'm just excited to see where it all goes.
I'll be curious about 20 years from now to see, when you all have children, what you're telling your children about this particular point in history. Or will you be more, like people who went through the Great Depression tend to be more frugal because they lived through a hard time. Are you going to be more or less social? Or are you going to, teach your kids to be more or less social? It'll be interesting. I won't be around to see it probably, but think about this 20 years from now, how the pandemic has really affected your long-term trajectory in your lives, socially, and so on and so forth.
I think I'll definitely take my collection of Clorox wipes more seriously in the future.
I think that the need for drama that we're getting fulfilled right now with all this atypical stuff happening, we're gonna go the opposite side of the curve, and we'll have a huge boost in thrill-seeking sports. If I had the money now, I'd be investing in extreme sports, because people are like, I'm gonna have to jump off a cliff to get that COVID high, So I think that's what's gonna happen.
Well, if you look at the pandemic in 1918 to 1920, what happened after that? We had the Roaring Twenties, right?
Right.
So it could be. Who knows?
That'd be awesome.
Screaming 20s.
I have to go in a minute, and I'm dying to do this closing prayer.
Okay, we will.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that we definitely addressed a lot of topics and a lot of questions were answered. So I really appreciate all of the faculty and everyone who's present. I'll definitely get in touch with Dr. Casadante more to set up more things and just have a conversation of what we can do in the future to continue something like this for the benefit of the students at Texas Tech and like even like the faculty making connections as well. And I'll definitely keep in touch with that, hopefully. But I really cannot thank you all enough for this great, amazing conversation through Zoom.
So what should our closing prayer be? Would you like to do a Hail Mary since we're coming up on the Assumption, or what?
One of my favorite prayers, and this is my excuse to do it here, it's this prayer by Thomas Merton. Some of you may have heard of it, but I think it's again perhaps very relevant in these times. And I mean, others may want another prayer after or whatever, but I really think it's relevant to what we're doing right now. So if you're okay with it and indulge me, I will read it for you. And it's so of course, being Catholic, we will start in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think that I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, although I may know nothing about it. Therefore will I trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. Amen.
Amen.
Spirit. I feel like this is a time like that first. Well, I mean, I say this all life. My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going, but hang in there. We think you're with me.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all. Delighted to see everybody.
Dr. Casadante, for the recording, do I just hit stop?